Karen Whitmore stood in her pristine driveway at 6:47 am, wearing her HOA-issued reflective vest and wielding a measuring tape like a weapon of mass destruction. She had already cited 3 violations before most of her neighbors had their first cup of coffee. Mrs. Chen's garden gnome was 2.3 inches too tall. The Johnsons' mailbox was painted sunset orange instead of the approved autumn harvest. And don't even get her started on the Rodriguez family's audacious attempt to install a basketball hoop that was clearly visible from the street. But this morning's crown jewel was happening right now. The 8-year-old Thompson boy was riding his bicycle on the sidewalk at 6:48 am, a full 12 minutes before the HOA's recreational activity hours officially began at 7:00 am. "Excuse me, young man." Karen's voice cut through the morning air like a rusty chainsaw. Little Tommy Thompson skidded to a halt, his Spider-Man helmet slightly askew. "Do you have your parents' written consent for pre-approved recreational activities?" Tommy blinked. "I'm just riding my bike to school." Section 4.7 of the HOA handbook clearly states, "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" Sarah Thompson appeared on her porch, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Karen straightened her shoulders. "Your son is in violation of quiet hours. I'm going to have to escort him to the HOA office for proper documentation." That's when Karen made her first critical error. She reached for Tommy's handlebars. The boy jerked backward, lost his balance, and tumbled onto the grass, which was, Karen noted with satisfaction, exactly 3.2 inches tall, and therefore also in violation. "Don't you dare touch my kid." Sarah was off the porch faster than Karen had ever seen a human move. "Tommy, get in the house. Now." But Karen wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and began recording. "I'm documenting this interaction for HOA records. Mrs. Thompson, your hostile behavior toward an elected official, elected by who? Your book club of 3 people, constitutes a clear violation of Section 8.2, Resident Cooperation Standards." Sarah's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You know what, Karen? I've had enough of your petty tyrant routine. You want to play games? Let's play games." That afternoon, Karen received her first taste of what would become an escalating war. She found her own mailbox, Regulation Autumn Harvest, perfectly positioned, meticulously maintained, wrapped entirely in neon pink duct tape. A note was attached. "Anonymous tip. Your mailbox appears to be the wrong color. Please remedy immediately. A concerned neighbor." Karen's face turned the same shade as the tape. She knew exactly who had done this, but proving it would be another matter entirely. She spent 2 hours carefully removing every strip, photographing the damage, and preparing what she mentally termed the Thompson file. By evening, Karen had drafted a 17-page complaint citing 14 separate violations she'd discovered at the Thompson residence during her routine inspection. The violations ranged from questionable, window blinds were off-white instead of pearl white, to absurd, their doormat was 1.5 inches larger than regulation size. She was just about to submit the complaint when her doorbell rang. Standing on her porch was Officer Martinez from the local police department, looking uncomfortable but official. "Ms. Whitmore, I'm here about a report of attempted child endangerment and harassment." Karen's world tilted slightly. "Excuse me. A neighbor reported that you physically attempted to restrain a minor this morning and have been engaging in what they describe as stalking behavior toward their family." "I was enforcing HOA regulations." Officer Martinez consulted his notepad. "Ma'am, HOA authority doesn't extend to physically touching residents' children or conducting what the complainant describes as surveillance activities. I'm going to need you to maintain a distance of at least 50 feet from the Thompson family and their property." As the officer left, Karen stood frozen in her doorway. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was the authority here. She maintained order. She kept property values high and neighborhoods respectable. But as she watched Tommy Thompson ride his bike past her house, exactly 51 feet away, she noted, he looked directly at her and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a knowing smile. And for the first time in her 15-year reign as HOA president, Karen Whitmore realized she might have finally picked a fight she couldn't win. Karen spent the next 3 days in what she privately called strategic planning mode, but what her neighbors might have recognized as a barely contained spiral of rage and obsession. She'd converted her home office into a war room, complete with a detailed map of the neighborhood, colored pins marking violation hotspots, and a growing stack of complaints she was preparing to unleash. The Thompson situation had become personal. Tuesday morning brought Karen's second critical error. She decided to get creative. At 6:15 a.m., she positioned herself at the corner of Maple and Elm. Technically public property, therefore not subject to the 50-foot restriction, with a professional-grade telephoto lens she'd borrowed from her ex-husband. Her plan was simple: document every possible violation at the Thompson residence from a legal distance. What she hadn't counted on was Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman with the oversized garden gnome, walking her tiny Pomeranian at the exact moment Karen was crouched behind a fire hydrant, adjusting her camera settings. "Karen, what in God's name are you doing?" Karen nearly dropped the camera. "Official HOA business, Mrs. Chen. Nothing to concern yourself with." Mrs. Chen peered at the telephoto lens. "Are you taking pictures of the Thompson house?" "Documenting violations is within my purview as you're stalking that poor family." Mrs. Chen's voice carried across the quiet morning like a fire alarm. "Somebody call the police. Karen's gone completely insane." Within minutes, Karen found herself surrounded by neighbors in various states of undress. Mr. Rodriguez in his bathrobe, the Johnsons sharing a single coffee mug, and Sarah Thompson striding toward her with the determined look of someone who'd had exactly enough. "What's the camera for, Karen?" Sarah's voice was deadly calm. Karen stood up, clutching the camera to her chest. "I'm within my rights to photograph anything visible from public property, including my 8-year-old son's bedroom window." The crowd went silent. Karen realized, with growing horror, that the telephoto lens was indeed pointed directly at Tommy's second-floor window. I wasn't. "Martinez," Sarah called to someone behind Karen. Perfect timing. Officer Martinez approached with the weary expression of someone who'd hoped never to see Karen Whitmore again. "Ms. Whitmore, we need to talk." This time, Karen found herself in the back of a police car, not under arrest, but being relocated for her own safety, after Mr. Rodriguez had made some very specific threats about what happened to people who took pictures of children in his neighborhood. The real blow came that evening. Karen returned home to find a certified letter waiting, a cease and desist order from Thompson Family Legal Services, demanding she stop all surveillance activities, remove any photographs of their property, and provide written assurance that she would maintain appropriate boundaries. But the letter wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the crowd of neighbors gathered on her front lawn, holding signs. "KRENS out. Red one. Stop the HOA here RSS declared another. Mrs. Chen, whom Karen had always considered a quiet ally, held a poster that simply said, "Enough." Sarah Thompson stood at the front of the group with a clipboard and a megaphone she'd borrowed from somewhere. "For 15 years, we've put up with petty tyranny disguised as neighborhood improvement," Sarah announced. "Fines for children's chalk art, citations for flower colors, harassment of families just trying to live their lives. It ends now." Karen pushed through the crowd toward her front door. "You can't do this. I'm the elected president of this HOA." "Actually," Sarah smiled, "you were elected by the 3-person board you appointed. According to the HOA charter, any group of 25 homeowners can call for a special election." She held up the clipboard. "I have 37 signatures." Karen's hands shook as she unlocked her front door. "This is illegal. You can't just." "The election is scheduled for this Saturday. May the best candidate win." As Karen slammed her door and leaned against it, breathing hard, she could hear the crowd dispersing with what sounded suspiciously like laughter. Through her front window, she watched Tommy Thompson ride past on his bicycle at 8:47 p.m., well outside approved recreational hours. And this time he wasn't alone. Half a dozen neighborhood kids followed behind him, a small parade of violations on wheels. Karen reached for her citation book, then stopped. Her hands were shaking too badly to write. Outside, someone had left a campaign flyer on her doormat. Sarah THMPS on for HOA PRESIDNT, ringing sanity backed to Maple Grove. But it was the handwritten note at the bottom that made Karen's blood run cold. We know about the financial irregularities, Karen. Drop out now, and we won't press charges. Karen had never mentioned the small, administrative adjustments she'd made to the HOA budget over the years. The minor reimbursements for her investigative equipment. The slight overpayments to the landscaping company her brother-in-law owned. How could they possibly know? The answer came in the form of a small voice from outside her window. Mont says knowledge is power, and power should be used to protect people, not hurt them. Tommy Thompson stood in her front yard, just beyond the 50-foot boundary, holding something that looked suspiciously like her missing HOA financial records. "Sweet dreams, Ms. Whitmore," he called cheerfully before disappearing into the growing darkness. Karen closed her blinds and wondered, for the first time in 15 years, if maybe she'd made a terrible mistake. The election was in 4 days, and she was beginning to suspect that losing the presidency might be the least of her problems.